Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our day number 2 of the workshop about child parent relationships with astrology. So, yesterday we talked about a lot of stuff. We've covered the influence of the main or the dominant element in the child's horoscope or in anyone's horoscope. We talked about the different element combinations within one chart and how they combine and basically what are the positives and the challenges. And we also started the different combinations about child-parent relationships. So basically, what kind of relationships people tend to have when we have different element combinations. But we still have some combinations to cover, so we are going to start with that. The last thing that we talked about was about earth fire combination. Now we are going to talk about the air air combination. And after we finish with all of those combinations, we have another topic about the position of the moon, which is also incredibly important for children and also for everyone. So we are going to talk about the moon in different signs and also the aspects of the moon. And after that, I will share with you a very interesting theory about the different expressions of love and basically how you can show your child, but also other people that you truly love them, which are the different expressions of love. So I hope you guys have watched the webinar from yesterday, or if not, of course, you can do that anytime you want. So just a second and we are going to start. Also, if you have any questions, you can ask them at the end. I will try to answer your questions about the topics that we are talking about in general. Okay. So, air-air combination. What does it mean if the parent and the child are both strongly influenced by the air element? Generally, this is considered to be a very positive combination. There is a mutual understanding between the parent and the child. They are capable of negotiating and communicating. Sometimes the communication is not really close or not very emotional, but both of them usually accept that, in a positive way. There is also a great sense of lightness. The air element is the most cheerful or the easiest, if we can say so. And this communication usually is easy, it's optimistic, it's positive. Sometimes it could be superficial, sometimes it's not really deep and emotional, but generally that's okay for the parent and the child. What's important in this case is that the parent should keep his promises. Sometimes we know that the air element may not be really consistent. And sometimes people with a very strong air energy in their chart, they may promise something and they don't keep it. Because, they change their opinion or they're focusing on something else or they are not really focused. And if that's the model of behavior for the parent, the child will learn to behave the same way. So think about you're an example for your child. But generally, as we said, a nice and harmonious combination between the air parent and air child. Now, the next combination that we have is air water. So what if the child has a dominant air element and the parent has a dominant water element? Generally, this may also be a very positive very positive relationship because air and water they both value the communication. Of course, from a little bit different perspective, air element is more about the intellectual, the friendly type of connection, and water element can be more emotional and sometimes more controlling or demanding. But generally, there can be a positive atmosphere. Sometimes the parent with a strong water element may have too much worries. Generally, this can be something typical for water people, especially if we talk about the Scorpio sign. And they may have too much worries for their child. So they may not realize that, they're suppressing a little bit the child with their fears or their worries. On the other hand, the positive side of the same combination is that the child may teach the parent to be more optimistic, to be easygoing, and to bring some kind of lightness in the relationship. Okay, hi Debbie, it's so nice that you have joined us. Great. So, air, water is, or in most of the cases, can be a harmonious relationship and connection. But sometimes also the parent may see the child as more superficial. You know how the air people, they have many interests, they are very curious, they want to have different friends to communicate, to explore, but they may not go really deep into something. And for the water parent, this might be disturbing. He may think that, the child is superficial, that he won't achieve, something meaningful, or, basically it provokes the fears within the parent. But honestly, my advice in this case is that, we have to accept that people are different. Different people value different things. And for the air people, it's just their world. Their world is different, and that's okay. I mean, we need to respect that, in my opinion. Okay, so what if we have the opposite combination? Water child and air parent. So in this case, the parent might be the more superficial person in this relationship. And keep in mind that the water element needs more emotions, needs more support and caring, and basically a warmer type of connection. That's important for the water child. On the other hand, the air parent might be more superficial. He may not realize that the child really needs those things. So, of course, the parent is the person who can be conscious about the situation, who can change something, and he just needs to, show more emotions, show more affection, um, get closer on an emotional level with the child, because that's important for those children. But we can still expect a nice, harmonious communication in general. Okay. Yeah, and here the person who may have more fears and worries is the child. So the parent really needs to pay attention, really needs to encourage the child and to respect also that the child may have his fears or doubts or worries. But keep in mind that very often the water people, the water children, they don't demonstrate this. They may keep this like something secret, something which is, behind the scenes. So sometimes you have to pay extra attention in order to recognize this. And the heir parents are not always, focused on that because they have their own stuff, they have many interests, and sometimes, it's not intentionally, but they might neglect the children or some of their needs. So as we talked about this yesterday, water children, they need more time, more care. So with this combination, you need to be, more supportive in general. Now, the next combination that we have, Air and earth. So the first one is when the child has a dominant air element and the parent has a dominant earth element. Generally, there is a big difference between those two elements. Air is about doing things, basically changing the focus or doing different things at the same time. On the other hand, the earth element is very concrete, very sometimes demanding, and there might be some kind of misunderstanding here between the child and the parent. The child may feel like, the parent is really conservative, or may feel suppressed by all of the rules or the things which are required from him. And on the other hand, the parent might be worried that the child is irresponsible or inconsistent, or those type of typical air stuff, when people are they just have many interests. So from that point of view, this might be kind of a challenging combination, which of course might be improved. But I think that here the parent needs to be more careful and to avoid being too strict, because we know that the earth element really values the order, the structure, how things are supposed to be. He really requires the child to keep all of that rules. And the air doesn't like that. Air needs to flow. So when we talk about the different elements, air, water, fire, earth, literally imagine the substance that we are describing and how it looks like and what kind of physical qualities it has. It's very helpful, by the way, in understanding the nature of the elements and astrology and people in general. So imagine the air, it flows easy. It wants to get everywhere it can. It doesn't stay on one place. As long as you expand the space, the air will take all of the space that it can. Just imagine. I think it's pretty clear. On the other hand, the water also wants to take all of the space that it can, but it's going on the surface of something, so it can't take all of the space like the air. And on the other hand, the earth element is stuck on one place. It's tough, it's hard. When you touch it, usually, it's not smooth. You cannot change the form so easy. So that's one approach which is very important, very helpful when you try to understand the elements. So imagine the air child who wants to, communicate with many people, who wants to be easygoing. Things are changing fast and sudden. And on the other hand, the earth parent wants things to be clear, wants things to be defined, to have the rules, to have the structure. And it's just difficult for the parent and the child to understand each other and their different needs. And of course, the parent is the one which we can expect to make the bigger step here in order to understand the child, at least when the child is really young. So from that point of view, this might be kind of a tough combination when the air child may feel suppressed in some way. Unless, of course, the parent is really conscious about the situation and realizes that, he needs to allow the child to have the life that he really wants and to do things according to his nature, not to follow the rules of the parent or the society or, what others are requiring. Okay, so what if we have the opposite combination? The child has a dominant earth element and the parent has a dominant air element. In this case, the child might be slower. The child may need more time. He doesn't learn really fast. He doesn't adapt to new circumstances or environment so easily. On the other hand, the air parent is really flexible. He likes changes, he likes variety, he's more impatient. The air element tend to be more nervous very often, and this might be quite annoying for the parent to allow the child, to take his own time. And very often these are the parents who prefer to do things instead of their children because they don't have the patience to allow children to learn on their own. And usually that's a mistake. You have to work on yourself and really try to allow your child to learn on his own, to support him, to teach him, to encourage him. And here it's very positive when the parent may bring his optimism and lightness and try to teach the child on those things which are kind of difficult for the child. But generally this may also be interesting combination. Of course, it depends on other stuff. It can be challenging in some cases because of the facts that we mentioned, but of course, people may work with that and they may improve the relationship. Okay, and one more thing also. Earth children, they might be insulted so easily, but very often they don't admit that. So they can keep things for themselves and they remember things for a very long time. On the other hand, because the air parent usually is not so sensitive, unless he has a very strong moon or Venus or something else. But generally speaking, air energy is not about emotional sensitivity. And sometimes, the parent may offend the child unintentionally. So you have to be careful how you treat the child because he may, remember things for a very long time. Okay, the next combination that we have is water. So what if both the child and the parent have a dominant water element in the chart? This is one of the strongest connections. Water is all about emotions. It's about feelings. Also, usually the water element, especially the Neptune part of it, brings this blood connection between people. And this is a very strong emotional connection when the parent and the child have both a dominant water element in the chart. Sometimes there might be a codependency. The child may depend on the parent, and the parent might depend on the child as well. So very often the relationship is great, very harmonious, very deep, very warm, but in some cases this may turn into an unhealthy connection, like an obsessive connection. Those type of mothers might be overprotective or too worried for their children. They may project their fears on their child, and unintentionally, they teach the children to be afraid of the same things. And we know that the water element is opened for this type of, influence from other people. They don't have this resistance, this barrier. So you have to be very careful how you treat the child, and you really don't want to, bring those fears and worries. And again, the mother or the parent should try to teach the child to be more independent, of course, through warm emotional connection, encouragement, and patience as well. But very often you may notice that these are those type of, child-parent relationships when those people are communicating even when the child, for example, is already 30 years old and the mother might be 60 years old, and they call each other every day, which sometimes is great. I mean, it doesn't mean that this is something bad, but you need to be more careful, especially when we talk about a boy and a mother. We know how those type of relationships sometimes might be, well, too intense. and they might become problematic in terms of, the boy may have difficulties with finding another woman who, can take the main role in his life. So a little bit more attention with this combination, especially if you have a son and both of you have a dominant water element. So the next combination that we have, water and earth. Generally, there might be a strong connection. Both of the elements are female polarity signs. They are passive. They like the connection. Sometimes the parent might be more demanding, might be, bringing some kind of too much rules or too much structure for the child. At the same time, water children sometimes tend to be really passive, sometimes even lazy, or, going with the flow, which might be disturbing for the earth parent. Earth people usually, they like results, they like concrete things, they like work. And if the child is, too passive or living in his own world, this might be more annoying for the parent. Okay, let's see. Yeah, but generally speaking, this can turn to be a positive connection. Both of them may take care of each other. Of course, the parent takes good care of the child when the child is young, and later, when the child is a grown up, he may really take a good care of his parents. So, this might be a warm connection. So, let's see. We have also the opposite combination as well, when the child has a dominant earth element and the parent has a dominant water element. This can also be a very warm emotional relationship. And here the parent needs to be patient with the child. We know that earth children, they might be a little bit slower, or they may need more patience, or they don't like the changes. Usually these are not things which are problematic for the water people. Water people are capable of being patient when necessary. They are capable of understanding the child or sensing the atmosphere and really, taking care of their child. So generally, this is one of the harmonious combination, or at least it has the potential to be a warm, emotional, harmonious connection. Now, the last combination that we have is when both the parent and the child have a dominant earth element in the chart. There is a mutual understanding because, both of them have the same needs. Usually they understand each other. The connection might be close, not necessarily really emotional or intense. Sometimes earth people tend to be more silent. They are not always expressing their feelings or their thoughts. So it's not always, an active verbal communication, but they are capable of understanding each other. And usually material stuff are very important. The environment, to have the rules, to be clear of who needs to, do the homework, or, the responsibilities at home should be clear. So generally there might be an understanding between the parent and the child. So now we've covered all of the element combinations. So we can move to the next part about the moon. So first of all, of course, we are going to talk about the sign of the moon. But let me remind you, what does the moon represent in someone's chart? First of all, for children, that's the most important planet because it rules this age, the age of, newly born baby to 7-year-old child. is ruled by the moon. After that, we have Mercury, we have Venus. So, you know, each planet is ruling a different stage of our life. And the moon rules those first 7 years when we are born. So it's extremely important for children. For women, it's even more important. And the moon, first of all, shows how we feel the outer atmosphere or the environment around us, how we feel the outer world. Is it a friendly place? Is it a warm place? Is it an aggressive place? Is it dangerous? Is it safe or unstable? Those things are really represented by the moon. Of course, not only by the sign, the aspects are important and other stuff, but the sign, of course, is the starting point. The moon also represents the communication with the mother, how we see our mother. And basically, the mother is our first connection to the outer world, literally. So be extra careful how you take care of your child. And before I start with the concrete astrological details, one thing in which I truly believe is that the most important for the child, or the first thing which is really important for one child, is to have a happy mother. If you are happy, if you are taking care of yourself, if you are trying to be optimistic, so all of those things, you know what I mean, you will give an example for your child, because you are the first model, you are the first connection with the outer world. If your child sees a mother who is constantly nervous or worried or afraid or aggressive or violent, the child subconsciously accepts that this is what the outer world is. This is a place where people are aggressive. This is a place where you have to be constantly afraid, for example. So before you start taking care of your child, understanding his moon, his horoscope, or whatever, you have to start with yourself. Just remember, when you are flying on an airplane and, you know, when they make those demonstrations how to take care of others in an emergency case and the oxygen mask, they always say first you have to take care of yourself, to put the mask on yourself, and then take care of the children or other people who depend on you. So you cannot take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself. So just something which I truly believe is important. So anyway, the moon represents how the child sees the mother. This doesn't necessarily mean that it shows the reality as what the mother truly is, but that's how this mother acts when she is next to the child. And it can be very strange because one mother may have two children, they have two different positions of the moon. And for one of the children, the mother may look like she's very caring, she's very warm, she's very supportive. And for the other child, the mother might be, for example, too demanding or unfocused, or, you know, acting in a different way. So basically, the moon represents how the child sees the mother. The horoscope represents that. Okay, so another thing is also the behavior of the person. The first reaction, the ascendant is also important here, by the way, but the moon is more important than the sun when it comes to our first interaction with other people. Our true essence, the truth of who we really are, is represented by the sun. But the moon shows how you connect with the outer world and what is the first impression in terms of your behavior when you are, you know, in the outer world somewhere. So very often we say that, you know, the moon represents our emotions, but to be more concrete, it actually shows um, it's an expression. It's how we express those emotions. And here, I mean, this is a very important part. I would like to repeat it again. The moon doesn't represent necessarily the emotions itself, it represents how we express those emotions. And you may have a child, for example, or a person who has, let's say, a water sun, the sun in Cancer, for example, but the moon is in a fire sign. Let's say the moon is in Aries. So the first thing that you will see is the behavior of this child and the person, the moon in Aries. He is active, he is brave, he may even be aggressive, he may even confront with other people, but that's the outer expression. The true essence of the person is related to his sun. So he, with the Cancer sun, he is actually very sensitive. He may even be shy or unconfident, but he demonstrates something else. Or you may have the opposite example. So let's say that the child has a moon in Cancer and the sun is in Aries. So let's take just the opposite example. So in this case, the first thing that you will see is the moon in Cancer, which is very soft, which is very, sometimes closed or shy and very warm and caring and even passive. Cancer moons, they can be very passive sometimes. But the truth is that the essence of this person is of someone who is a fighter, someone who is a warrior. So on an inner level, he has this potential to be strong and confident. So from that point of view, we have to understand that the moon shows us or reveals us the behavior of the person, the outer expression. And sometimes the sign of the moon may increase the strength of certain indications, may represent them, in a really exaggerated way, really impressive way, for example, with moons in fire signs. Or in other cases, the person might be, controlling himself or closed or not showing what's going on an inner level, for example, with the earth moons. So always remember that, generally you have to analyze the whole chart, but what the moon shows is the behavior of the person. So, signs of the moon. Let's start with the fire moons. Fire moons, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Usually, those children are very cheerful, they're very active, they need to do something, they need to be, or usually they enjoy being leaders, they want to be more independent. And especially with the Aries moon, these are children who may confront sometimes with others. These are children who sometimes might be aggressive, not always, of course. I think that in this case you need to analyze Mars, but let's say that Mars is making some challenging aspects or is in a very key position. Sometimes the child might be more aggressive. Also, the child might be really impatient and it's kind of, more restless energy. Typically, one of the best things for those children is practicing some kind of sport. This might be really healing for them. The communication with the mother usually is very active. The child with the Aries moon usually sees the mother as very brave, as a warrior, as very confident. Sometimes the mother may look like more aggressive towards the child, but not necessarily, of course. And I think that these are some of the most important qualities that those mothers need to represent. So, in order to build up a stronger connection with your child with the Aries moon and to encourage him, you have to be brave, you have to be a warrior, you have to be strong and active and confident. But typically, this is, a very active child, a very independent child. Now, next we have the Taurus moon. Taurus is a very strong sign for the moon. Basically, this is the sign of exaltation of the moon, which means really strong, really comfortable position for the moon. Usually, those mothers or the mother of a child who has the moon in Taurus is very caring, very, very supportive. He likes to, make life very comfortable for the child. Security is very important here. Even things like food or this type of the material side of our lives is very important for those children. The challenge which I have noticed many times when I see someone with the moon in Taurus is that the mother might be too demanding. She may just have too many requirements, or there might be more order, not in a cold way, not with the Capricorn way, but we may still expect a more demanding mother. But generally, this is a very, very nice position for the moon, and the child sees the mother as someone who is very caring and very supportive. Material stuff, material belongings are very important for those children. Security and stability, and keep in mind that these are children who may need more time to adapt to new circumstances. The moon in Taurus, that's the most typical, that it's not really adaptable, because that's another thing which is represented also by the moon. How well or how fast you can adapt to new circumstances, to new environment. And even though the moon in Taurus is really strong, really nice, the adaptation is not good. So it needs more, the child needs more time, and usually the child likes security and order. Okay, so next we have the Gemini moon. So if the child has a Gemini moon, usually the mother and the child may have a very friendly relationship. The relationship might be a little superficial. The relationship may not be really deep or really emotional, but these are, the type of relationships when they're just like friends, when they are like, like equal. And personally, my daughter has the moon in Gemini, so I can really, understand this position, and I really understand how it manifests. And keep in mind that those children, they really need the verbal communication. It's extremely important. They're curious, usually they're easygoing, unless the moon is, challenged by some difficult planets. But generally, moon in Gemini, they are very good when it comes to communicating with others. So they need verbal communication. They need, this kind of talking, which, sometimes looks like a constant talking on and on. I think that, every parent usually has went through this phase. But for the Gemini moon children, this is kind of a, constant pattern, or at least it can be. And even if it's not expressed in a concrete way, it doesn't mean that the child doesn't have this need within himself. So try to communicate more with your child, to share your ideas, to teach him also. Those children really like to be taught by their mothers. It doesn't mean like literally you're teaching him on maths or something like that, but you're just sharing your thoughts and your experience. Okay, so next we have moon in Cancer. This is the strongest position for the moon. That's the sign of its ruler that's the rulership basically of the moon. So children with the moon in Cancer, they have a very strong connection with the mother. Usually the mother can be very caring. This is, the typical role of the mother. The mother who is cooking, who is taking care, who is, providing a warm environment and support. And That's what this child needs, a warm emotional connection. For example, we said the Gemini moon child needs more the verbal communication, needs more variety. That's a curious child who likes to, learn different things, who likes variety. The Cancer moon child needs a warmer emotional connection, needs a safe environment, needs the typical type of mother. So that's the difference. But usually those children have a very nice connection with the mother. Of course, the aspects are important, but this child has a stronger need for, a connection with the mother. The child might be shy. That's very typical for the Cancer moons. They might be shy. Sometimes they might be worried. And also, they might be more passive. Sometimes it may look like laziness. In other cases, it's lack of confidence or procrastination in some cases. So those children may need more encouragement to in order to be more active. Not always, but very, very often. Okay, so next we have the moon in Leo. A very nice position for the moon. I mean, not really strong for the typical moon qualities, but at the same time, very cheerful, very, very playful. Those children, they need attention. They need to be admired. Um, Usually, they can see the mother as someone who, they admire, someone who is very special. So if you have a child with the moon in Leo, you have to be like a princess in order to encourage him, in order to, to support this part of his personality, the moon, the Leo moon in his horoscope. So those children can be very expressive when it comes to their emotions. Sometimes they may dramatize. These are one of the typical drama queens in some cases, in many cases, but not always, of course. They need attention. They need you to respect them, to admire them. They need to feel important. That's one of basically the general things. Those people need to feel that they are important. So, as a mother or someone communicating with this person, in order to nurture, his feelings and his personality, you really need to show him that he is extremely important. But generally, those people and those children can be um, very positive, very optimistic, very creative and playful, and they are capable of enjoying life. So usually that's a nice position for the moon. Next, we have the Virgo moon. Virgo is not a really strong sign for the moon. Those children can be very precise. These are the children who might be very responsible. They like the order. Sometimes the mother might be too demanding. The mother usually is very caring, someone who follows the rules, someone who do things according to what they are supposed to be. I mean, the mother follows the routine stuff, but usually the mother is not very emotional. So usually there is not, a close emotional connection between the child and the mother. Those children usually like very much rituals. Of course, it depends, on the whole chart, but in most of the cases, they may respond very well if they have their own rituals, if they do things, according to how they are used to do them. So sometimes those children might be more unconfident. Sometimes they may also be more critical with themselves, with other people. They might be more judgmental. But again, I think that here the encouragement is very important. from the mother, from parents, from teachers. They need to encourage those people, specifically the children, and to show them that it's okay to make mistakes sometimes. Virgo people, Virgo moon children, sometimes they may have problem with allowing themselves or forgiving themselves when they make a mistake. And very often the fear of making a mistake actually makes the child or the person stuck. So he may not even try because he's afraid of the mistake, or because he's afraid that he will be judged or evaluated or something, coming from the environment. So that's usually what makes the child more unconfident. And he may have really high standards for himself or for other people. So another thing which can make those people more unconfident. Yeah. Debbie says, yeah, Debbie, you had your moon in Virgo, if I remember correctly, together with Uranus and Pluto, I believe, which is, kind of an intense combination, I guess. So, yeah, interesting position for the moon. Next, we have the moon in Libra. The moon in Libra. So those children really value the harmony and balance. It's extremely important for them to be in a peaceful environment. If there are confrontations between the family members, if there is an aggression, arguing, those children may really shut down. They need to be surrounded by beautiful environment, harmonious relationships between people. Usually they may see the mother as a friend as well, close to the Gemini moon. Libra moon children also may feel like their mother is their friend, like she treats them as equals. Generally, we can say that this is typical for the air moons. But with the Libra, because Libra is ruled by Venus, so here the connection might be very friendly, very warm, or at least that's what the child truly needs. If we talk about boys, here the mother should be more careful, because the boy might create a really strong bond or connection with the mother, which might be more unhealthy. So if you have a boy with the moon in Libra or in Scorpio, these are the two signs which can really bring those type of, unhealthy connection, which is more relevant to the romantic relationships. And you really need to be clear about the boundaries, and just to be careful and not make your boy dependent on you. But generally speaking, Libra moons, they really like the communication. Also, it's very important for them to be liked by others, to like their appearance, to receive compliments from other people, warm words, polite communication, verbal confirmation. This is very, very important for the Libra moons. But usually they respond very well to the environment. Air moon people, they are capable of noticing the outer environment and to adapt themselves according to it. So, yeah, usually these are friendly people who are capable of being kind and polite, and the relationship with the mother, as we said, can be very friendly. So, next we have the Scorpio moon, which, in my opinion, is the most difficult. This is considered to be the fall position for the moon. So basically, the weakest position is the Capricorn, the Scorpio position is, well, a little bit before that on the scale, but in my opinion, my personal experience shows that the Scorpio moon can be more challenging than the Capricorn moon. Even though, in the books they may say the opposite, I truly think that Scorpio is the more challenging side. The moon, one thing which also the moon represents is how capable are you to relax and to take a rest. Literally, as we said, Cancer as a sign is very passive. It's about comfort, it's about relaxation. Sometimes we call those people lazy, but they're just more capable to relax. And when the moon is in a really tough position, like the Scorpio sign, which is all about tension, Scorpio is the sign of crisis. It's very difficult for those people to relax because of some fears, because they may have worries, or they may feel like they have those constant obligations as grown-ups, or they may feel like they always have to be ready to respond to danger or to other stuff. It's not easy. It's not easy for those people. And if your child has a Scorpio moon, you have to be especially careful. The child may have different worries. The child might be suspicious. It's not easy to open up. It's not easy to communicate, to express himself. He might be afraid that something bad might happen if other people see what he truly is. So it's that the children or people might be restless, or it's just more challenging. The relationship with the mother usually is not easy. Usually is not easy. Sometimes the mother might be more manipulative, or at least the child may see things from that perspective. The mother might be more controlling. Very often the intentions actually are very good. The mother wants to take care, the mother wants to prevent bad things, but actually how the child sees things is in a different way. He feels suppressed or controlled or manipulated, and it's not helpful, and there is a desire to resist, to confront, to stand up for himself. And another thing which I have noticed for the Scorpio signs, this is the demanding type of love, when you have an exchange of love and something else. Sometimes this can be those mothers who say, well, I have given up everything for my child, I have done so much, I have sacrificed so many things, he owns me, and he really needs to pay attention to what I'm saying, because I have done so many things for him, and he needs to respond to my love because I have done so many things for him. And usually that's not a good foundation for love. This is type of a trait when I have taken such a good care for you, and I have done so many things for you, but now it's your turn. That's not real love. That's the type of you know in my opinion, unhealthy love. Of course, we cannot say that in all of the cases there things are so problematic. Of course not, but usually there is certain level of tension for certain reason. Hmm. Yeah, I see that Debbie confirms that. Yeah, it could be difficult, truly. you know those people, they just have so many fears. I think that this is one of the main reasons. It's very difficult for them to trust others. And if you have a child with the Scorpio moon, of course it doesn't mean that you should say, oh, my child will hate me, or my child sees me as a bad mother. No, the emotional connection, the bond can be very intense and strong, actually. Even though it's challenging, it may still be, usually actually it's very intense. when we talk about the aspects, it's very similar to the Pluto moon aspects. They also create this type of karmic, intense astral connection between the child and the mother. When, I think that we have all been witnesses, or we have been through those type of relationships when, there is something which is attracting you in the person, and something which looks so awful for you. So it looks like, you love and hate each other at the same time. These are more like, toxic relationships, painful relationships. Again, I think that the Pluto aspects might be more intense even than the moon in Scorpio, but it's still something to be more careful with. So if your child has a moon in Scorpio, or maybe you are communicating with another person who has the moon in Scorpio, you have to be very cautious. Just respect that this person has his own fears and worries. Yeah, so yeah, I will read through your comments, guys. Just, of course, it's great. I'm happy to see your comments, but I will comment or respond after I finish with those stuff here. So, Moon in Scorpio, tension. One thing which can be helpful for those children is some kind of sport, because those children and those people, the Scorpio people, they can be very passionate. And if there is something intense, like, something similar to a critical situation, and usually, in sports, when you have to compete with others, when you have to fight with others, it's supposed to bring tension. I mean, it's just part of the game. So those children may respond very well. Also, fighting sports or those type of intense sports, they may bring even some kind of confidence for the child, that he may protect himself, literally. So that's a good idea, I believe, when you find something to channel this energy, a direction where the energy can be channeled. Okay, so yeah, enough about the Scorpio moon, I think. Next, we have the Sagittarius moon. So much different, so much easier, I would say. First of all, that's a fire sign, so we have a much brighter, much more extroverted expression of emotions and behavior. And usually those children are very optimistic. They love to learn new things. They love experiments. They really love adventures. They may see the mother as a very optimistic person, and as someone who can be their teacher, someone who can be an example for them. So this type of combination can be very positive. Again, it's not necessarily a very deep emotional connection, but it can still be very, very positive and optimistic. And usually those children, they are easygoing, they need to express themselves, they need to be respected, they need to be appreciated. Very often they can be very ambitious. Usually children with fire moons, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, but especially Leo and Sagittarius, they can be very ambitious. And all of the fire moons like to compete with other people. Aries is in the more aggressive way, or might be the more aggressive. Sagittarius is the softer from the fire moons. But, and about the Leo moon, they are more, like, they need to be admired. So they don't want to fight so much for something. It's just what they deserve to receive very often. So about the Sagittarius moon, optimistic attitude towards life. Usually there can be positive example from the mother, and success is very, very important for those children. Adventures, traveling are one of the greatest things for those children. They like to explore the world. Usually these are the children who are open, who are ready to, go outside in the world. They have positive expectations for the outer world. As we said, maybe I think this is one of the most important things from this workshop, to to explain to you how important is the position of the moon for the expectations of the person for the outer world. And as we said, back to the Scorpio moon people and children, they may have negative expectations. They may feel like, the world is kind of a dangerous, unsafe place. On the other hand, the Sagittarius moon children and people, their first reaction or first expectation is that the world is a friendly place. The world is a place where you can be active, where you can express yourself, and usually they have confidence within themselves. So yeah, the fire is just one of the, easier elements in general. Okay, next we have the Capricorn moon. As we said, this is one of the challenging positions. Those children might be really close, and those people, so they don't express so easily what's going on an inside, on an inner level. Even though they may have, for example, the sun in Leo, or maybe the sun in Sagittarius, or a very bright sun or Venus. So on an inner level, their potential is different, but how they express this is shown by the moon. And the moon in Capricorn can bring some kind of resistance, some kind of fears, worries. Very often, the mother can be seen as someone who is very strict, very demanding. Sometimes she might be cold, she might be distant, or there is no strong emotional understanding or connection. But it doesn't mean that the mother is bad, or a bad person. Sometimes, the mother might be a workaholic, or someone who really values other stuff, not so much emotional connection. Also, those children may feel very well when there is a routine regime in some way, or when things are clear, when things are repeating, so they know what to expect. Security and safety is a key word for those children. Cancer and Capricorn is the axis which responds for feeling safe and secure in this world, from a different perspective, of course. But Capricorn and Saturn generally brings us the sense for stability, that we have a clear form around us, that we know what to expect. So children usually like routine stuff. Very often children with the Capricorn moon, they may have very strange eating habits. They may eat a couple of things, for example, pizza, fries, and sandwiches. And they may not like to, try new things. They like the familiar stuff and they stick to them. So they don't like the new things, the experiments. They're in some way more conservative. And, it's just who they are. Okay, so yeah, I think that's the most important for the Capricorn moon. So be more cautious with those children. Try to be more caring. Try to, support them about expressing their feelings, about sharing their thoughts, and also to, to respect their privacy. And keep in mind that usually they can be very silent, so it's not easy for them to express verbally everything that they think or they feel. Okay, so next we have the Aquarius moon. So Aquarius moon usually is, those children are easygoing. They are communicative, they can connect with others, they value friendships a lot. The communication with the mother can be very friendly, but not warm at the same time. Because keep in mind that Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Saturn. So they are both ruling Aquarius. So Saturn has some kind of impact here on the moon, which means that, there is some kind of distance. They're, you know, they're seeing the mother as a kind person, as someone who can be their friend, but there is certain level of distance, at least on an emotional level. And the same is true about, how those children express themselves. They can be friendly, but they don't let you get too close. It looks like they're easygoing. You can get in touch with them. They share some stuff, but they don't get you too deep and too close so easily. And it's usually it's not something which you can recognize immediately, but they need a certain space. Usually those children really value variety, so they like experimenting. They might be a little strange sometimes, after all, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, so there might be a stranger behavior, or for example, they may have very different habits which may look strange for others. Even as really small children, really young children, they may, eat in different hours. They may go to sleep in different hour every day. So they are more different than for example, from the Capricorn moon. They don't like so much the strict rules. So as we said, yeah, the connection with the mother is friendly, even though it's not too deep and intense, but they still can see the mother as an interesting person, as a friend in some way. Okay, and the last sign that we have is the Pisces moon. Mm, Very interesting position. Generally, this is a strong sign for the moon, because the moon is a water planet. So yeah, in Scorpio, even though it's a water sign, it's not feeling comfortable, but in Pisces the moon is okay. So we can say 4 points from out of 6. So strong position. There can be a close emotional connection with the mother. The mother might be very caring. Usually, this can be the mother who is over caring. So she's trying to do everything for her child. At the same time, the child may not see the mother clearly. Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and whenever we have Neptune, we can expect some kind of foggy and clear situation. So, the child may not see the real face of the mother. At the same time, also, those children are oversensitive, over emotional. They might be really introverted. They're dreamers. Sometimes, they may look strange for others because of their imagination. And one thing which is extremely important for Pisces people, and of course for Pisces moon children as well, is that they need some time alone. Because Pisces is an energy which feels the energy of others. You respond, they're like sponges. And if the Pisces moon child is constantly communicating with others, the child can be exhausted at some point. So those people and those children need some time on their own. They need some isolation. And you should, allow your child to have his own time. It shouldn't bother you. It's just who they are. And yeah, sometimes they might be really unfocused. They may forget many things. They may look like, they're not here on the earth, like they're living in their own world. It's just part of their nature. Usually those children can be very creative. Usually they're very soft in their communication. They're very polite. They don't like confrontations. They don't like fighting. They don't like to, to initiate some confrontations. Instead, they may back up, they may shut down. So it's not so easy to always understand what's going on inside. But, we all have our stuff. And generally, this is a position which can allow the person to be very intuitive, to be very empathetic with other people, to feel the atmosphere, to understand others. Again, the emotional connection with the mother might be so deep that the child literally feels what's going on with the mother, so it really affects him. So yeah, this is what generally keep in mind, that the water moons, they can bring a stronger connection with the mother. Even with the Scorpio moon, which we said can be challenging, even in this case, there still can be a strong connection with the mother, even if it's problematic. So the water moons are more specific in some way. Okay, so we've covered the signs of the moon. Next, we can talk about the aspects of the moon. Now, here I want to mention something very important. Keep in mind that the general information we can get from the sign of the moon. The sign of the moon is more important than the aspects. The aspects can bring certain layers, certain additional information, but they are not more important than the sign of the moon. So, for example, it's one thing to have the moon in Capricorn, and it's another thing to have, for example, the moon squared by Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn. So don't think that those things are the same. The sign of the moon will always put the foundation or the first layer, and it shows the true essence. So what's inside, what's the true nature of it. After that, the aspects may show how this energy is modified, how it's expressed, in which cases there might be challenges, for example. But the general information comes from the sign of the moon. So let's start with the different aspects. Now, to make things simpler, I will talk about positive and challenging aspects in general. Positive aspects are considered to be the sextile and the trine, the major positive aspects. Challenging aspects are considered to be square and opposition. When it comes to conjunctions, it depends on the nature of the planets. Some conjunctions are harmonious, for example, the moon with Venus. Other conjunctions are challenging, like, for example, the moon and Mars. So to make things simpler, I will talk generally about the positive aspects and the challenging aspects. Now, first of all, let's start with aspects between the sun and the moon. These are one of the most important aspects. One more thing. So I don't want to dive too deep into the topic about aspects, because it's like a whole other workshop. So we can talk a long time for that, and I even have another webinar about it. But just to summarize, keep in mind that when we talk about aspects, they show connection between two planets. But sometimes the so-called challenging aspects might be very productive. Even if we think that, for example, the square can be challenging for some things, on the positive side, it can bring you more energy. It can bring you bigger potential. And on the other hand, when we talk about the positive aspects or the harmonious aspects, the trine and the sextile, even though they are, considered to be great, on the negative side, sometimes they can bring laziness or passiveness, or the person may not use this potential. So my point is that it really depends on how you're using the energy, the potential of the aspects. So it's more important, for example, than that you have an aspect between the sun and the moon. That's the first thing. It's important that you have this aspect. The nature of the aspect is something which comes after that, and something which you can work with. And for example, even if you have a challenging aspect between two planets, it means that you may work with this energy, you may combine it, you may process it in a different way. But the main idea here is that you shouldn't be afraid when you see that you or your child or someone else has a challenging aspect, a square, for example, between certain planets. Yes, for some issues, this can bring problems, but for other things, it can be more productive. So, how we work with the energy is very important. So, let's come back to the sun moon aspects. Very important, because these are the main planets which show your true essence and your behavior and your connection with the outer world, with the outer environment. So any aspect is important. Square, the opposition is a full moon. Then we have the conjunction, which is a new moon. They are always important. Of course, when you have a challenging aspect, a square or an opposition, it means that the person needs to put more efforts in order to express himself in the outer world. He may, for example, let's say that the person has a square, or the child, between the sun and the moon. He needs to put more efforts to express himself correctly in the outer world. And even though there might be some kind of resistance or some kind of challenges, actually the motivation can be very high. And if you have a positive, or your child has a positive aspect between the sun and the moon, this is one of the really, really great aspects, which allows the child to feel like the outer world is a place where he may express himself, like, the outer world is a place and people are recognizing him. So that's really one of the greatest aspects. Usually it also means that the mother is capable of supporting the child to express himself. So really, really great aspect. Now, next we have the aspects between the moon and Mercury. Now, here, even the challenging aspects, square and opposition, won't bring, for example, aggression or really problematic behavior. The challenging aspects between the moon and Mercury may bring challenges for this child to express himself verbally. Sometimes it may show challenges with the speech, not always, but sometimes it could be a challenge with the speech, with expressing himself. He may feel also that the outer world or people around him don't get him, they don't understand his ideas. Sometimes the child may feel like, people are not on the same intellectual level as he is. Very often that's the case. But the positive aspects, on the other hand, are very good for writing skills, for speaking, for expressing his ideas, his thoughts verbally. Very often those people have some kind of talent. And when it comes to the communication between the mother and the child, this aspect can show that The verbal communication is very important for this child, the verbal communication with the mother, I mean, and also that the mother may teach the child on many important stuff. So this could be an interesting aspect, but even as we said, the challenging aspects, square and opposition, they don't bring, serious issues for the behavior of this child. About the conjunction, I can't say that this is a negative aspect. I would consider it as a neutral or maybe even a positive aspect because, it can be very productive when it comes to intellectual work, to writing skills and those type of things. This is a very, very nice aspect. So next we have the moon and Venus. Very important both for men and women and girls and boys. For women and for girls, it shows uh, basically how they manage or balance their feminine energy. Negative aspects or challenging aspects between the moon and Venus can make the person over emotional. They can make also the child may feel or might be more sensitive about the emotional connection with the mother. Very often, not always, but very often, those children may feel like if they have a challenging aspect, like their mother doesn't show his love, or the child may feel like the mother doesn't love them enough, which is not necessarily, what is truly happening, but that's how, the way that the child sees the situation. Generally, if you have a positive aspect, if the child has a positive aspect between the moon and Venus, this can make the child really kind, really polite, really sensitive. For boys and for men, this is very important about their expectations from women. If there is a challenging aspect between the moon and Venus in the horoscope of a man, it may indicate that the boy or the man is comparing women to his mother, or he is searching for a woman who should represent something that his mother represents. Or also the role of a woman as a mother and as a woman might be something different. This is a very typical case when those type of men who are attracted to a woman, when they're in the stage of romance, and when this woman becomes a mother of their children, the man is no longer attracted to her. It's just that this man can see the woman as a mother or as a lover, and it's difficult to combine them. So for men with the challenging aspect between the moon and Venus, this is a very typical pattern. Okay, and of course the harmonious aspect is great for communication with women, for his romantic life, this type of balancing the role of the lover and the mother. I'm sorry, Crystal, but I'm not sure that I understand your question correctly. Virgo moon opposition Mercury, can that cancel itself out to be more positive? I'm sorry, but can you put it in a different way? I'm not sure what exactly you're asking about. If you can ask it or explain what exactly do you mean. Okay, so Moon and Mars. One of those, well, specific combinations. Planets which are completely different. So I'm not sure if I mentioned, but Moon and Venus conjunction is very harmonious. Here, Moon and Mars conjunction is very disharmonious. I'm one of those people who have this aspect, and I can totally confirm that. Mars is a planet related to fighting, um, to a planet which requires to compete with others, a planet which is not about resting or comfort. And as we said, the moon is about comfort and peace. So when you put those planets together, it may look like, there are different scenarios actually. In one of the cases, if the moon is stronger than Mars, if you have a conjunction or your child has this conjunction, if the moon is stronger, I mean, the sign is stronger for the moon, this child may feel like, the outer world is really aggressive, like he's constantly in danger, like he has to defend himself. I personally used to have this issue before I learned astrology. I have always had this sense that, to be extra careful whether someone is trying to offend you or someone is trying to confront you. And you're always, experiencing some kind of tension, like, you always need to be ready, which is very uncomfortable. On the other hand, if Mars is stronger than the moon, usually those children might be more aggressive. So they don't feel that the outer world is so aggressive, but instead they are being more aggressive with others. Some very often actually they are also impatient, they are always in a hurry, they are rushing things, they want to compete with others. The harmonious aspect or the positive aspect, sextile and trine, can make the child very active, very dynamic reactions. For sports, this is great. He may see the mother as very brave and, initiative person. But even the positive aspect can make the child more restless. Like, he has to do something constantly. But of course, trine and sextile is much easier. Square and opposition may also be very challenging, and very often there might be confrontations within the family. If you have a challenging aspect between the moon and Mars, it could be a confrontation between the child and the mother, or confrontations with siblings, or generally the family atmosphere is not harmonious. For example, the parents are constantly arguing or something like that. So this is really one of those challenging aspects. But keep in mind that usually when children are aggressive, they are doing this to defend themselves. I also think that it's the same for grown-ups. People who are aggressive, these are people who have been hurt, people who are unconfident, people who are trying to protect themselves by, you know, attacking others first. Okay, so next we have a very positive planet, Jupiter, the moon with Jupiter. Of course, the conjunction is very harmonious here. The positive aspects show that the mother can encourage the child, can bring optimism. Those children can be also very ambitious, they may have confidence. The challenging aspect here is very interesting. The moon squared by Jupiter or opposition with Jupiter. This may represent that the mother is comparing the child to others. For example, these are the mothers who, in order to encourage the child or to provoke him to improve, may say, like, look, this child had a better result than you. Look, this child, is better at maths or on this sport or whatever. So the mother is comparing the success of other people and in some way, is suppressing the child. So if your child has this negative aspect between the moon and Jupiter, be extra careful with that. Try to encourage him without comparing his results and what other children are achieving. And as I said, positive aspects here are very, very really one of the most positive aspects for the person, and especially for the child, of course. Also, the mother might be kind of a teacher for this child. She might be, someone who is sharing her wisdom or ideas or inspire the child. So, really great aspect. Next, we have Saturn. Saturn with the moon is not a harmonious combination. The conjunction is very disharmonious as well. Saturn brings barriers, brings restrictions. So especially conjunction, square, opposition, they may bring lots of fears, uncertainty for the child, fears and worries, as we said. Also, these are the people who are more predisposed to sadness, even depression as grown-ups, especially if one of the planets is related to the health houses. This may literally become a depression. Not always, for some people it's just, like more pessimistic attitude, more, you know, the emotions are not expressed easily. And there is some kind of, self-control here. If you or your child or someone else has this Saturn moon aspect, even the positive aspect, they bring certain level of self-control. So, these are the people who can be very careful with their behavior, who might be afraid that they will be criticized, who may try to do things, according to the structure or what's supposed to be done. Children, who have these challenging aspects, they may have many rules to follow. Usually these are mothers who expect a lot from the children. Sometimes these might be mothers who are really distant or missing for some reason. So Saturn in a challenging aspect with the moon is also one of the really tough aspects. The positive aspects can make the person really responsible, really strict, controlling himself, trying to do things, in the right way, to follow the rules. And when it comes to, work or business or responsibilities, this can be a very, very productive combination after all. Now, next we have aspects between the moon and the outer planets. Very interesting combinations, all of them. The outer planets, they have an energy which is coming from a different level. So here things can be more complicated. The conjunction, first of all, conjunction with Uranus and Pluto is considered to be challenging. Conjunction between the moon and Neptune is mostly positive, even though it may bring challenges as well. It's considered to be positive. So moon Uranus, very, very tough combination when it comes to the challenging aspects. These are the aspects which can make your child extremely nervous. Those children, they are restless. They may have very unpredictable reactions. Also, it makes it more difficult for those people to relax. For example, I have a square between Uranus and the moon. And you may notice my behavior that, it may even look a little bit annoying for other people. Like, I'm using lots of gestures, I'm moving. I cannot stay still at one place. I need to move. And especially with children, they might be, they may look very strange for their parents. Like, they have to do something constantly. Like, they are unpredictable. So just, you have to respect that. Your child might be more nervous because of that. The nervous system usually is very sensitive with the challenging aspects between Uranus and the moon. Also, the child may see the world as a more unpredictable place. Like, there is certain level of instability. Also, the mother might be very different. I mean, she may have like different faces, and she might be unpredictable. Um, yeah, Debbie shares that she has the conjunction and she has trouble sleeping. That's also typical, especially if one of the planets is related to 8th or maybe 12th house. But even if it's not related to those, yeah, my father also has the same aspect as I have already shared. And he's also one of those people who, sleeps like a couple of hours, he wakes up a lot. So that's a very typical manifestation of the aspect. It's like, those people and those children don't have a strict regime. Things are different, things are unpredictable. But the challenging aspect might be quite uncomfortable. It's difficult for the child and the person to relax, and the nervous system might be extremely sensitive. These are the children who can also be very sensitive about if they are constantly, working with computers or with the phones. So you really need to put some kind of boundaries and, allow children to take a rest, to go outside in the nature somewhere outside of the big cities when, we are constantly influenced by all of these devices around us. Television, video games for children, especially for boys, even telephones, and all of those social media stuff. The positive aspect can bring lots of creativity for the person, can make things very exciting, can make the mother look like a very interesting person for this child, and usually it makes the relationship more friendly. So as we said, everything can be both positive and challenging depending on how we are using the energy. The Moon Neptune aspects, as we said, the conjunction is considered to be mostly positive. It increases the sensitivity incredibly. Every aspect between the Moon and Neptune can bring also tendency for, desire to escape the reality. These are the children who can be really unfocused. They may forget, they may not pay attention to details, they may look, like they're living in their own world. Their imagination is very bright, very colorful. Now, when it comes to the communication with the mother, the positive aspects can bring a very close emotional understanding and softness in the relationship. So it's a very warm aspect. The challenging aspects may represent, like, the mother sometimes might be either oversensitive and emotionally unstable. Sometimes she might be missing. In some cases, of course, here we have to analyze other stuff, but generally this may indicate that there might be some kind of sickness or something like that. Or, like the mother is someone who needs a lot of care for her. So yeah, sometimes this aspect may also bring tendency for addictions, or those type of really unhealthy behaviors when we are trying to escape the brutal reality. But definitely each aspect between the Moon and Neptune makes the child very, very sensitive. Okay, but as we said, great imagination, creativity, inspiration, these are, some of the benefits of this aspect. And the last aspect that we have is between the Moon and Pluto. Here, the conjunction is considered to be challenging. Any aspect between the Moon and Pluto increases the connection with the mother. And especially the challenging aspect, any challenging aspect between the Moon and Pluto can make the relationship too strong. I mean that these are more like the unhealthy relationships. For example, for boys, this might be the case when they have such a strong connection with the mother that they are incapable of attracting a woman as a romantic partner. And very often this can be on a subconscious level. So it doesn't mean that there is something literally wrong within the relationship, like weird. Sometimes there might be, but not necessarily. But there might be like such a strong connection with the mother that it's just not allowing other women close to them. The topic about control and power is also very important. Of course, the challenging aspects may bring confrontations. The child may feel like the mother is manipulating him or is overprotective. Usually, these are overprotective mothers. Every aspect, Moon, Pluto, shows that the mother is overprotective, trying to control the child or the environment, or those type of things which are, well, more basically outside of our control. Fears are also typical for this aspect, especially the challenging aspect. Mostly the challenging aspects. Actually, they can make the child really suspicious. They may bring trust issues. So, those children don't let you get close to them. You have to be very careful. You have to show that you are reliable before they allow you close to them. But every aspect between the Moon and Pluto can deepen the emotional connections for this child and for this grown-up person. Also, all of them can increase the intuition. And basically, the three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all of them can increase the intuition. All of them can bring special skills or abilities or potential from a different perspective, of course, but all of them, especially their major exact aspects or the conjunctions, can be very, very special. Okay, so we've covered all of the aspects of the Moon. Now I want to share with you a very interesting psychological theory. The founder of this theory is called Gary Chapman. I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. And he talks about the different expressions of love. And he says that there are 5 expressions of love, or of emotions and care. So the first one is the physical touch. The other one is words, verbal communication, basically. The third one is gifts, so material stuff. Then acts of service or taking care by, doing something concrete. And the fifth one is the time that you spend together, quality time. So those type of different the languages of love, those type of expressions of love are very important for every relationship, for your romantic relationships, for your friendships as well, and especially with your child. And Gary Chapman says that we all tend to have one major language or expression which is extremely important for us. And if we don't receive that from our partner or from other people, we don't feel this love or affection. And the biggest problem is when you're in a relationship or in a partnership where you have different languages of love. So you are doing what you think that, basically what you need for yourself. That's how you're treating the other person. But because he has different needs, he may not recognize your love or your efforts. And the difference here, of course, with children also, Usually children have one main language, which is very important for them. But for children, it's recommended that you use all of the 5 languages to nurture them and to express your love. So let me repeat again one by one. The first one is the physical touch. Of course, for romantic partners, this can include sexual relationships, but not only. So, if sex is very important for you, it doesn't mean that this is your primary love language. It also includes all kinds of, physical communication, hugs, kissing, holding hands. This type of, when you're encouraging someone by, touching his shoulder. When you're communicating with your child, you may do that in different ways. I mean, like you can touch him on the shoulder. Sometimes this may look like a play when you are, provoking him in some way. Of course, kissing, hugging. This is a very important expression of love. Many people and many children has this, this need. But when we talk about astrology, I believe that children with a strong water energy in their chart, and also the earth people and children, they have a higher need for this expression of love. So let's say that your child has a dominant water element, or a very strong moon, or let's say the moon in Taurus, I think also needs that. So mostly water and earth people, they need more the touching part, the physical expression of love. And again, as we said, if let's say that your child has a dominant earth element and a very strong moon, so he really needs this physical connection, this physical touch. But if you have a dominant air element in the chart, and let's say a very strong Mercury and Uranus, you are not someone who really enjoys the physical touch. Most of those people, it's not like their main priority. Usually their main priority is the verbal connection, the communication, mutual intellectual understanding. So those parents may not recognize the need of their child for physical connection and touch. So of course, in this case, you just need to put some efforts, or to be more conscious of how you're communicating with your child. So physical touch is the first language or the first expression, and water and earth energies, I think that are the most who really require that. Okay, the next one, serving or acts of service. Basically, this is when you're taking physical care of your child, cooking a nice meal, providing something for them, maybe even supporting them with their homework, or doing something concrete for them. So concrete efforts. These are, again, for the serving, I think that the earth energy really values that. So if your child has a very strong earth energy, or maybe the moon in an earth sign, or if Saturn is in a key position, serving is very important. So taking care in concrete way, support with homeworks, providing, the material stuff. These are very important things. The next one is gifts. Well, I think that every child likes receiving gifts. And again, the earth children, I think that they truly need that, because the material stuff are really important for them. So you have to show your love in a very concrete, very practical, even measurable way. So for those children, gifts are extremely important. Of course, it doesn't necessarily need to be buying expensive stuff. It could be something that you create for your child, or something that you do together, or something which is your own. For example, my daughter really loves when I'm giving her some of my stuff. For example, a pen or a notebook or something which I have used. And when she likes it, and if I say, well, okay, you can have it, that's for you, she totally loves that. So that's also one thing which we can all do for our children, especially for, as I said, the earth children. Now, the next language, quality time. Quality time is extremely important, I believe, well, for everyone, but for water children, this is very important. I think that here we can say for every type, because fire children, they feel more appreciated. They feel like they're important if you're spending time with them. And here the definition of quality time is very important. Quality time is not when, for example, you're at the same room and the child is watching cartoons, or and you're working, or doing something on your phone, scrolling through Instagram. This is not considered to be quality time. Quality time is when you are going outside in the park for a walk, even at home when you're doing something together, when you're playing a game. Or I think that you all understand what I mean. Quality time is when your attention is focused on your child. It's not like when you're at the same place, it's not enough. And quality time, I believe, is important for everyone, but especially for the water children, for the fire children, air also. But for the air, the verbal communication is very important, and this is basically the last expression, words. When you express your love with words, so literally when you say, I love you, you are so important for me, or encouraging words like, you did great today, or I'm so proud of you. This is a very important language for the air children. Dominant air element, children with air moon, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, they really value that. So for verbal communication, verbal expression of your feelings and appreciation, but also the other part is encouraging words. This is a great model, in my opinion. Those expressions of love, those five languages are so important. And as I said, we all tend to have a primary or two really important languages, but for children, they need all of them. And I just think that it's so important to, to put some effort in this direction. So we've covered our stuff. We made it. So let me see what you have to say, guys. Yeah, Crystal shares that she has Pluto, Saturn, Mars in fourth house. Her top languages is acts of service. The list is gifts. So clean with me, wash my dishes, I love you. Very interesting. Yeah. There are actually two books on that topic. Gary Chapman, the first one I believe is called The Five Languages of Love. The other one was also, I think, Five Languages of Love for Children. So he has a separate book about children. And I think it's an exceptional theory. So I highly recommend you to, to read the books. You can find them on Amazon. They have Kindle versions, so very valuable. Yeah, Debbie asks, can we use this information for ourselves as adults? Absolutely. Totally. All of that. It's just, it shows human nature. So I think that it applies to everyone. Yeah, Crystal shares that her children are so different. Yeah. Mm, and they, I can assure you that they both see you in a different way. Or it's really, really possible that they see you in completely different way. Okay. So that's well, the information that I have prepared for you guys. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much again for enrolling. The next step, which is more advanced, is first of all to interpret the child's horoscope on its own, but you have to, analyze it, different details. And after that comes the synastry between the child and the parent, which can give you, another layer of interpretation, but it's really, really personal. I mean, we cannot do that as something general for everyone. Um, I have actually videos, I made tutorials about how to interpret the child's horoscope, and I have another one about the child parent synastry. So if you haven't watched those videos, you can find them on my channel. If you want, I can search for the links, but you can also find them. The videos are uploaded on my channel. And if you need more assistance about, personal interpretations of your child's horoscope or the synastry, you can contact me, and yeah, we can discuss that. Debbie asks, is Saturn quincunx the moon a hard aspect? Well, first of all, yes. Second of all, not so much. The quincunx is an aspect which has a different impact. At the beginning, the influence is like a square aspect, so it brings challenges and difficulties. After you pass this period, or if you pass this phase, there might be some benefits. But first, the person will face with some kind of challenges. There is some kind of adaptation here. So yeah, we can say that at least at the beginning, this will be a challenging aspect. Okay, guys. So are there other questions? This is a very big topic. I mean that there are so many things, so many layers, but I think that this is a great starting point from what we covered those 2 days. Okay. Aspects with malefic planets that show up in the charts in children. Well, we've covered those aspects. The malefic planets are can be the outer planets. Mars and Saturn can be malefic. So according to what we've covered. Debbie, yeah, you can watch the first day. Both of the videos will be available as recordings, so everyone. I know that people have their own stuff mm, on the weekend, so I understand that. Crystal, later, as let's say oppositions with squares, did they worsen? I'm not sure. What do you mean? Do you mean like if are the aspects changing with the age or something like that? I'm not sure. Can you please clarify your question? Okay. Debbie. Yeah, Debbie is part of the Eclipses Marathon. Yeah, we are doing some great stuff there. Lots of work. Yeah, today the moon is actually in Cancer, and that's why I picked up those days, of course, because this is the, the child and the emotional and the moon topic. So that's why we talk about that. Uh-huh, Crystal, you're talking about repeating aspects. Well, we talked about that yesterday, that these are very important karmic aspects. If you have, or if the parent and the child have similar aspects between the same planets, it shows that there is, the same topic which goes through the generations. And I would say that, they increase, when you have the same energy coming from different sources, it's increased. Oh, Crystal, okay, great, great. Okay, yeah, I will post the video in the Eclipses Marathon shortly. Yeah, I have an interesting task for today. So thank you guys again for your time. It was really great to be here with you on this weekend marathon. And yeah, we will stay in touch hopefully. And if you have some ideas about future workshop or about something that you want me to explain or to prepare for you, you can always send me an email. Or if you have some kind of suggestions, I'm open to all kinds of suggestions. My email is marina@marstars.net, or you can find the contact form on my website as well and send me an email from there. So if there is something concrete that you would like to see more of, or a concrete workshop, or a topic which is, well, interesting for you, you can always send me an email as a suggestion or idea or advice. I'm open for that. So thank you very much again, and I will see you next time.